My first flight, Jerry Silberman. The one consistent love I have had throughout my life is flying. Dreams, books, and the experiences of pilots I knew made it long to fly before I ever experienced my first flight. It was, in fact, all I talked about. Then my brother, Gene, bought a two-seat ultralight. For 19 years, my feet had not left the ground. Now it was time to fly, and the experience did not disappoint. An ultralight is the basic aircraft made. It is almost a hand glider, except that it has an engine. Its structure is made entirely of aluminium tubing, dacron fiber, and stainless steel cables. The engine is 50 horsepower, 2 cycle, 2 cylinder, 503. This is the same size as the average snowmobile engine. The cockpit is open, meaning that one sits right out in the open. There are no walls, floor, or windshield. In front of the pilot are two pedals to control the rudder and the control stick for the throttle, spoiler rings, and elevators. The gauge consists of a tachometer, wind speed indicator, and altimeter. That is all there is to the craft. It isn't much, but oh, the thrill it provides. On the day of my first flight, I was dressed in old jeans, a flight jacket, goggles, and a helmet. I felt more like a World War I flying ace than a modern aviator. Clear prop were the last words I heard until landing. Because of the engine noise, everything communicated in the air would be in sign language or by facial expression. Jane pull started the engine. We taxied to the end of our runway and turned to face the wind. I gave Jane thumbs up to let him know I was ready. Boy, was I ready. He nodded, twisted the throttle, and bounced over the rough field. We were airborne. The only way to pinpoint exactly where one leaves the ground is by noting the extreme smoothness of air after the choppiness of the grassy field. I felt suspended. The ground dropped silently away as we climbed to clear the maples at the end of the runway. Jean's hand gripped tightly on the control stick as we skimmed 30 feet above the leaves. It felt less like we were rising above the earth than that the earth was falling away from us. Jean banked to the right and we headed north, climbing higher and higher. Suddenly I was scared. In an instant, the reality of my situation had hit me, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it. Jean was in control, and all I could do was breathe deeply to keep from throwing up. Fortunately, as soon as we swept over another group of trees, the trauma of takeoff passed and a rush of excitement replaced it. My brain could not walk fast enough to take it all in. My eyes darted left and right, trying to see everything at once, and my brain worked to process the fact that I was sitting out in the open hundreds of feet above the ground. Then I felt the most powerful rush of all, freedom. That is what flying is all about for me. I never felt more free. There were no restrictions on me as we soared high above the land, going 30 miles an hour at 1,000 feet, which felt practically like hovering. We crossed empty fields, large wooded areas, and some sparsely populated streets. I could see people out in their yards and imagine them watching in awe those crazy people in their cat-like crafts. The day was mostly clear with just a few scattered clouds to remind us of our altitude. Lack of oxygen prevented us from climbing above the clouds, but we were close to the same level as a few of the lower ones. Clouds look different from up close and from the side. They seem more substantial, more cottony. Viewed from the air, clouds have a three-dimensional reality instead of the two-dimensional sense we get when we view them from the ground. The rays of the setting sun were diffused through the undersides, giving the clouds between us and the sun a luminescent silver base that seemed to support the puffy white foam that billowed upward from the silver. The sun was a bright red ball that rolled along the horizon as we turned to head back. It gave an orange glow to the hazy horizon, and orange-tinted fog drifted below a light violet sky. It was a display that could only be witnessed from the air. The earth slowly rotated and the great fireball lowered beneath land. Jean gave the signal that we were on our final approach for landing. I watched the ground as it rose to our level. As the craft leveled after its shallow dive, my stomach dropped. The effect of that small G-force was my last taste of flight. We were back on solid ground. I have flown many times since then, and I always get the same rush of freedom and thrill from the perspective that being airborne provides. Flying intrigued me before I ever left the ground. Once I did, I was hooked.